Hi, this is Hot Chocolate with Paul. Today I'll be talking about trips that I have taken to Washington, D.C. through the years. Uh, it's, uh, it's a wonderful historical city that I've really enjoyed visiting. The first time I ever went was in 1979 when I was involved with WGMC Radio here in Greece. I was a high school student, and I, along with some other students who were also working at the radio station, were part of a group that went to what's called the Intercollegiate Broadcasting System Convention, or IBS for short. Louis Bedstead, who was the general manager of the station, drove us to Washington, D.C. So we stayed in a hotel, and while we were there, we took the opportunity to do some sightseeing. We were able to meet our Congressman, Barbara Conable. The first evening that we were there, we went out for dinner. And then, even though it was dark out, we still decided to do some walking around the Washington Mall and doing some sightseeing. I remember it was very cold out. We had tickets for a tour of the White House. We entered from the east entrance toward the east wing of the White House, the basement of the White House, and then the first floor of the White House. While we were inside the White House, we were not allowed to take any photos. But I certainly took photos on the outside of the White House. And this photo of me standing in front of the White House is one of my all-time favorite pictures of myself. We toured the U.S. Capitol. It was quite different then because we were literally able to just walk right in like it was any old office building and just walk around the building and see what was there. We visited the National Air and Space Museum. In 1994, my first wife, Mary, and I visited Washington, D.C. for our 10th wedding anniversary.
Here's our hotel, proposed 5% of the That's French. Very fast. There's the view outside our hotel room. There's the Washington Monument. There's the Washington Monument all lit up. Crazy.
After the 1996 presidential election, when Bill Clinton won re-election, I decided I wanted to see what a presidential inauguration would look like. So I took a couple of days off from work and made the journey to Washington, D.C. I stayed at a bed and breakfast that was only 3 blocks away from the Supreme Court building. I arrived the day before the inauguration and spent some time walking around the Washington Mall. The morning of the inauguration, I had a ticket to go onto the Washington Mall to watch the inauguration, which was up on the steps of the Capitol building. I was still pretty far away. They did have some giant TV screens around that we could see what was happening, but from where I was standing, the only person I was really able to pick out was Hillary Clinton, and that's because she was wearing a pink outfit that stood out from everybody else. After the inauguration was over, while some of the speeches were still going on, I went over to Pennsylvania Avenue to pick out a spot to watch the inaugural parade. I watched about the first half of the parade and then started walking around again. I made my way back over to the Capitol building because by then there was no more security. I could see the podium and all the seats where everybody had been sitting. And then after the parade was over, I walked around some more into the evening, just looking at some of the historic Washington sites. I remember walking over to Ford's Theater where President Lincoln was assassinated. And I wasn't able to go inside, but I saw the outside of it, and also the house across the street, which is what they call the house where Lincoln died. As I was walking around that evening, one thing that really stood out to me was hearing sirens from a lot of motorcades that were going on. Clinton himself and other VIPs were being escorted around to various inaugural balls. Of course, I wasn't invited to any of those, but the memory of hearing all of those sirens as the motorcades were going around really stood out to me. I also got to walk on the section of Pennsylvania Avenue in front of the White House where the president, his family, and his friends watched the inaugural parade. Directly across from there was a large area set up for the press. The parade to cover, plus Clinton and his other spectators watching the parade. I visited Washington, D.C. with my family. The last time I went to Washington, D.C. was in 2021. This was Stacy's first visit to Washington, D.C. It was a hot day, and my cousin was nice enough to drive us around and drop us off and pick us up at various places. To me, the sad thing about that last visit is how Washington has become so locked down with barricades. Places where I stood in front of the White House and behind the White House and getting up to the Capitol building, you can't even get close to them anymore. It's like Washington is being fortified against an enemy, only it's not a foreign enemy that we're at war with or something like that. It's our own people that Washington is being protected from. It's a sad state that our country is in now. There's so much inflammatory rhetoric that's going around. Everybody's shouting at each other and nobody's listening. I hope I get to see that calm down in my lifetime. Thanks for watching this episode of Hot Chocolate with Paul. I do want to mention that the music that you've been hearing playing in the background is from my own band, Excelsior Brigade Fife and Drum Corps. Have a good day.